Well, let's then push forward then to the summer 2023 window, the one that the listeners graded as the best window under
Correct.
this time period, and the one that definitely gives you more about performance than actual potential with some of the purchases that happened. The listeners overwhelmingly 51% saying it was a 5 out of 5. You had 36% who gave it a 4. You had 6% as a 3, and then you had a couple stragglers there giving it 1s and 2s, but very much on the outside looking in at the overall view. This was the window again where Moises Caicedo comes in for a record fee, 116 million euros, followed by Romeo Lavia from Southampton, 62.1, and Kunku. The official deal that had been pre-agreed ends up getting executed in the summer, 60 million euros there. Cole Palmer on the very end of the deadline coming in for Man City, 47 million euros. Disasi comes in, 45 million euros. Nico Jackson comes in, 37 million euros. Leslie Ugochukwu comes in, 27 million euros. Robert Sanchez, full name treatment, the 23 million euro signing from Brighton. Georgi
Sam's
Petrovic,
favorite player as well.
Come
He
on.
loves him.
Multiple goalkeepers in this window. Petrovic comes in, 60 million. You had David Washington come in, 16 million. Angelo comes in, 15 million. Moreira comes in as a free transfer from Benfica B. And yeah, that was quite a list of incomings, Sam, in terms of the players who ended up coming in this window. And it definitely made it exciting, to say the least. You know, like we felt like we were the story, we were the star of the conversation in pretty much every major transfer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think Cole Palmer's doing like a lot of work in that, 4 or 5 rating there. Lot of work. But obviously, like we had the luxury of also getting Moises Caicedo, who I really, really think is a sensational player. Like we paid a lot for him, but on his day, he's worth every single penny. So just in terms of the incomings, I would probably look at that list and say it's a 4.5 for me. We're all Jackson Hive here, and we really think that in terms of picking a really good striker for the money that we got him for, superb. And again, like from an intent perspective, I look at every single signing on that list, and I know that we signed Christopher Nkunku earlier on, but he came in that summer where he joined us and he was able to sort of like get into groove. And if that injury wouldn't have happened, we would have seen his Chelsea trajectory maybe somewhere else under Pochettino. So I really, really believe that. Again, great intention, picked up a sensational attacker, just didn't work out for whatever reason. So my scores there is just, maybe 4.55. A couple of players that I'm not really big fans of in that incoming list, but the outgoings is a pure 5 for me. Like
We'll
to
give the
sell
outgoings
Havertz
a
and
run in a
Mount.
second.
Yeah, to give Havertz and Mount to your rivals, simultaneously weakening them and getting 150 million euros for it. Incredible. Absolutely. Like this is corporate sabotage of the highest order, and I absolutely appreciate that. So I would say like this is a 4.7525 window for me. Sensational.
So that's the American capitalistic sensation, just really, really rearing its head there from our ownership group. Nick, why don't you give us your pass fails for some of these players too from the incomings, because I know you have very, very maybe contrasting opinions.
Yeah, Sam and I are doing battle on this podcast. Moises Caicedo, clear pass. Romeo Lavia, I don't think you can say that. Been fit for none of our games, maybe 15% of our total games since he signed. Again, I'd throw him in the Fofana category of like, I just don't know. And so I wouldn't maybe call it a clear fail, but terrible luck. Nkunku has been a pass, but barely. Again, injury derails him for sure. Palmer, clear. I mean, the number one signing by a country mile of this ownership group. Disasi, clear fail. Although he was better under Poch than he was this season, but just not a position that we really needed. Although with the injuries, he did end up playing a lot. So again, I give him credit for being available when others weren't. Nico Jackson, I would still put as a clear pass, but the longer his current drought, as we record this on February 9th of 2025 goes, I think the more in question that eventually becomes, but I think he will be a clear pass by the time it's all said and done. We don't really know that much about Leslie Guchukwu. Robert Sanchez, to me, is a clear fail of a signing. I just don't. I didn't get it then. I don't get it now. And I think the fact that he's vacillated between number one and number two, despite having the ownership and management support, just tells you what you needed to know. Georgi Petrovic, I think, was a clear pass, but is now clearly someone the club are trying to sell. So I don't even know what that means. And then I would throw like the likes of, you know, your David Washington, your Angelos, your whatever. Like, there was no plan for these guys to come in and figure out how they were going to be productive members of Chelsea Football Club. And it's what makes me scared for the upcoming South American superstars that are coming into our club. Like, what is the fucking plan? What are you going to do? Because clearly David Washington, Angelo, Diego Moreira's, those sorts of guys were not good enough to be in Chelsea's first team, and there was no development plan for them. So I don't even think I'd put a fail tag on them. I think it was complete mismanagement of that. So that's kind of where I net out on those.
And we do have, as Sam pointed out, we did have some departures in that window that were very much, I think at the time, recognized as some really, really great business in terms of getting players out the door that didn't necessarily make the fit or weren't necessarily going to have a long-term future at Chelsea at that point. Kai Havertz going to Arsenal, 75 million euros. Mason Mount to United, 64.2. Kovacic to City, 29.1. Koulibaly leaves, goes to the Saudi Pro League, 23 million euros. Pulisic goes to Milan along with Loftus-Cheek, 20.8 and 18.9 respectively. You had Mendy go to the Saudi Pro League, 18.5 million. Leeds ended up picking up Ethan Ampadu for 8.1. You had the loan for Lukaku to Roma, 5.8 million on a loan fee. You had Nottingham Forest, Callum Hudson-Odoi, 3.5. That doesn't look as great anymore. You had Moreira goes on loan to Lyon. You had Kepa going on loan to Real Madrid for 1 million euros. You had Hutchinson going to loan on Ipswich, which was really good for his career. Bunch of free transfers. N'Golo Kante leaves the club. Cesar Azpilicueta leaves the club. Aubameyang leaves. Bakayoko leaves. Barakman leaves. All on free transfers.
Baba Rockman and Bakayoko leaving in this window is so funny.
Then you had loans of Ziyech to Galatasaray. You had Andre Santos going to Nottingham Forest. You had Angelo go to Strasbourg. Cassidy goes to Leicester. David Ocho Fofana goes to Union Berlin. You had Lewis Hall go to Newcastle, and what we referenced maybe a little earlier, not the type of loan that has worked out well for us, worked out really good for them. So Nina goes on loan, and then you also had the ending of the Felix and Zakaria loans. I feel like a 4 is where I landed, and a lot of that's carried by the Cole Palmer performance. Again, this year there was no European competition. Chelsea finished 6th in the Premier League, ended up in the final in the League Cup, semifinals of the FA Cup. So you could argue they were more competitive with what they had available to them as a team. Their net spend was a negative 185.4 million euros. They had brought in 278.7 million in sales and ended up spending 464.1 million on a whole. I think you were a 3.5-ish, Nick. So you graded a little bit lower, but you could be convinced on the day.
Yeah, I mean, by far our best window. I don't grade it as high as you guys do because I think at the time there were some questionable things in there. Like, we didn't know who Cole Palmer was going to be when we signed him. There was clearly some like advanced scouting that rated him pretty highly for his age. But I mean, for 37 goal contributions out of nowhere, I think that the Nkunku injury obviously potentially fast tracks his development. These are not all hits, but it's a higher percentage of hits. It's a higher percentage of sale hits for sure. And I will, remind everyone that I was not a huge fan of Mount leaving when he did. I would decried that. I think knowing what we know now, it looks like a good move. And obviously the stuff with his dad saying like, this is where they want to be, all that sort of stuff really didn't endear him to Chelsea fans after that. But this is a really great sale period and I think a pretty decent buy period. So I'm in between a 3 and a 4, just on the whole.
And Sam, just to confirm, you were a 4-5. Was that where you landed on the end of this?
That's changed my mind a little bit. Now I'm feeling bad. I'm looking at all those deals and saying, okay, maybe I missed out a little bit in terms of. I think I was just entranced by the creme de la creme of those outgoings. So probably like a 4.5 for incomings, and probably the same for outgoings. We could have done the loans better. Was very disappointed with how, like Nick mentioned, you've got all these promising players, these young players, but you have zero pathway. I don't think there was one intelligent thought in terms of how you would want to develop them. Look at Slonina, look at Petrovic, for example. You got him here, hurriedly put him in the first team. You've jetted him out to Strasbourg, where he's been one of the best keepers in Ligue 1. So it's just one of those things where you've made the right intention, you've signed him for a good fee, but he thrives in a different environment. And it's the same with, say, Washington, who we got for a sizable fee and sold him back to his club for a discount. So makes zero sense to me. So probably a 4 for outgoings.
Nailed it.
Well, let's continue advancing forward in the conversation here. So we went through one of the best windows that Chelsea have executed in this time frame with incoming players, and then now we go to the winter 2024 window, and no key incoming players in that window. I mean, Alfie Gilchrist, really gets added to the squad and gets a chance to involve himself. But you see loans and for Santos, for Cassidy, for David Ocho Fofana, and Diego Moreira. And you see because there's not enough to talk about an incoming. I was going to cover the departures at the same time. Borja goes to Fulham on loan, 4.7 million. Ian Matson goes to Borussia Dortmund, 2.3 million on loan. Santos then goes to Strasbourg. David Ocho Fofana goes to Burnley, and then Lucas Bergstrom gets a loan as well. Very, very blah window with not a whole lot going on. That's kind of how it went. Like, I don't, there's a reason why I think the listeners are like, oh, generally 1, 2, and 3 kind of built up the scoring. 25% set of 1, 23% set of 2, and then 35% set of 3. And then you had another 17% in the 4 or 5 camp. It just was really a nothing window.
Yeah, and I just like contextualize this where we were this time last year, basically, right? Enzo Fernandez had an injury that kind of right around this time period, which meant that Conor Gallagher, who was largely playing as like a 10, moved back into midfield to partner with Caicedo. So it felt like we were pretty light in midfield, and I think there were people going like, "Hey, what's the plan with this expensive midfield here? What are we going to do?" And then there, obviously Nico Jackson had kind of gone through a dry patch, so we loaned Broya, who was his backup at the time, and Kunku was just kind of getting back from the knee injury, but not clearly not a fully functional guy at this point. It was an injury riddled time, and Chelsea were not performing well. We only started performing well kind of later in the season when the stakes were very low, and so I think I understand why there's a scatter across the board here. We didn't do anything bad in this window. In fact, I think you could argue the loans had some good intent to them. Obviously, the Matson loan is an incredibly successful loan, stuff like that. And you look at Andre Santos going to Strasbourg at this time, like that second half window made a lot more sense than maybe giving it credit for in real time did. But we didn't hurt ourselves. Maybe didn't help ourselves. Is that fair, Sam?
Yeah, I think as long as you don't spend any money, you're not really like damaging yourself. So I think prudence was the name of the game, and I'd probably say like you can go for a safe 3. Maybe there were a couple of key decisions that could have been made, but I think by that point in time, our hierarchy were also having second thoughts about Pochettino being the guy. So just probably said we keep the money where it is. Thank you very much, and fully consider in the summer. So I'd probably go 3, 3.5 on that, just for being a little intelligent with that money.
I mean, if you look at that too, I mean, that's really the moment too in that season where things started to turn for Chelsea. I mean, we only played two Premier League matches in the month of January. We had the win against Fulham 1-0 and that 4-1 loss to Liverpool. There were only two more losses the remainder of the Premier League season. The 4-2 to Wolves on the 4th of February, and then Arsenal 5-0, which was a real doozy on the 23rd of April. The rest were wins, particularly that last run of five too, that were really, really special. And so I think if we say hey, you could have done more damage by putting yourself in a situation where you bought somebody and they really didn't end up being the right fit for this team, you got yourself in a better place. And so I think that is you did more by not doing anything in this window. So I think if you wanted to say 3, I think that's pretty fair. Shifting forward then to the most recent summer window. And I feel like there's going to be some recency bias here. There's going to be a little bit of feelings about where the club is at currently relative to how these players are performing, even though they haven't necessarily had a full season at Chelsea. We are closer and closer to the end of the season. So this should be more fair than it is unfair to some players in case of, where they're at currently or how they're progressing at this given time. So I think that's kind of maybe the caveat I would put in here, taking a look at it. Incomings for this window included Pedro Neto for 60 million euros, Joao Felix, 52 million euros, Dewsbury Hall, 35.4 million euros, Jorgensen, 25.4, Penders, 20 million euros, and Anselmino, 16.5, Renato Vega, 14 million euros, Caleb Wiley, 10.1, Mark Guiu, 6 million. Tosin comes in as a free transfer. Jadon Sancho comes in as a loan transfer, which we would look to execute at the end of the summer. Then you have no additional incoming loan activity. We'll set the stage. What's that, Sam?
Kellyman also came in. He's not listed on the list, is he?
No, he's not. And maybe it's because of his age, but he is not listed in the transfer market. So I'm gonna blame transfer market for that one. That they just don't view him as a actual footballer, which very unfortunate for him. Real bad beat. I don't know if it's bad beat for Kellerman or for transfer market, but one of them real bad beat here. And
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it's quite interesting. Then I mean it's in terms of just the list that I'm looking at here, I want to be, sort of side towards the dark side and say that there's just too much happening. But yeah, I really I'm confounded. I'm looking at every single deal here, and there are some good ones to do. Like Mike Penders, for example, could be. I'm hoping that he ends up being the next Courtois, and everything that's said about him is gospel. But from a rating standpoint, I really don't know what to give this, especially because a lot of the good things might just yield 3, 4 windows down the line. So maybe a big, one for the future. But yeah, the incomings that we did make for this one, um, I don't know, Nick. What's your read on this?
This is it's my score is a 1, and I would go lower if we had that on the scale.
Wow, you would dip into the negative zone.
I think this was just pure and utter nonsense. I think it was player trading. I think it was trying to satisfy PSR requirements based on previous windows and stuff like that. I mean, Pedro Neto, I would barely consider a pass, but really, I mean, dodgy. Felix is a complete fail. Dewsbury Hall, complete fail. Jorgensen, we don't know, but I don't have great hope. Penders, we don't know. Anselmino, we don't know. Matthias Amagu, I don't know, and we won't know for some time. Renato Vega, would be surprised if he's with the club past the summer. Caleb Wiley, we don't know. Mark Guiu, I think I lean more optimistic on Guiu because I love the effort and the enthusiasm in the chase, but I don't know if he has the quality necessarily. So I will be hopeful on him. Jadon Sancho, I think just on a loan with a £25 million Tag has been fine. Whatever. And then Tosin's been fine. The only good things is that you promote Josh and Ty to the players you already had, and that it took forever to get those contracts in order and finally get that all set up. That was a stressful month or two, if you remember back to that. This is terrible. I mean, it's really, really bad. And this was the turning point for me, I think, like in the give them time perspective, because instead of building on what was a relatively successful 23-24 transfer window where you can really start to see the model take shape, this just feels like player trading and huge bets on unknowns to potentially try and bring your squad up to a level where they can compete. And notably, we're not in a title race, so I just don't get it.
It does feel like a 115 would be a good place to land in rating this window. As we kind of talk through some of those arrivals, have they made the team better? Have they secured the starting position over somebody else? I mean, Neto, Sancho, Madueke, at the time Mudryk, before he got his negative test came back, and now is kind of in a little bit of a purgatory at the moment until he gets a final decision. Like, there's not a solidified answer there on if they are better. I mean, Jorgensen's getting a run out now in the league, but only because of a prior window mistake, and Sanchez coming in. Like, I think we all hope that someone like Penders could be great. But this did not make the squad better in any way, shape, or form. When you flip to departures, I mean, you sold Ian Matson for 44.5 million euros. You sold Conor Gallagher for 42 million euros. You sold Lewis Hall for 33 million euros. Lukaku gets sold finally to Napoli, 30 million euros. Hutchinson gets sold, 23.5 million. Angelo gets sold to Saudi, 23 million euros. Was not expecting that one. That one felt like came out of nowhere. Strasbourg ends up taking Moreira for 2 million. And then you have a couple free transfers. Ziyech leaves on a free transfer. Sarr leaves on a free transfer. Thiago Silva leaves on a free transfer. Tino Andrin leaves on a free transfer. And then you had a bunch of loans, like a ton of them. Sterling to Arsenal. Love that one. Leslie Ugochukwu goes to Southampton. Broya goes to Everton. Petrovic goes to Strasbourg. Chalobah goes to Crystal Palace. We'll visit that one in the next conversation. You had Kepa Arrizabalaga goes to Bournemouth, who are doing very well this season. David Datro Fofana goes on loan. Gilchrist goes on loan. Wiley goes on loan. Bashir Humphreys goes on loan. Slanina goes on loan. Asselmino goes on loan. And then Penders goes on loan. It feels like the departure business as an overall is what's carrying this window, because it does feel as if, the clearing out of the side, Sam, really had a chance to kind of truly get finalized with a couple of things. There's maybe some loans that you wish had been permanent sales, but it felt like it ran very, very late into the window. But there are a couple like, hey, would we be a better side with Lewis Hall available to us right now? Yes. Like, I think that's a very fair statement to make, watching him play for Newcastle and continuing to help them be successful. Conor Gallagher has done very well. Whether or not you agree with, is he the right positional fit under Enzo Maresca? Seemingly could be someone that we would have been better off with versus either the Lavia attempt or potentially trying to make another midfielder work. It doesn't necessarily feel like we've made the departures were fine in terms of at least clearing house.
Yeah, I mean, I've also got a theory for the incomings. I mean, in terms of when you're scouting and you want to reinforce a certain position, let's say the club usually has a tier one, tier two, tier three, and tier four signing. And in our case, I think we had Samu Morodion, who's at Hawa now. So it's Samu. We had John Duran. We had Osimhen as well. And we failed to get number one, number two, number three. So after that, they basically said, if you can't get the top three targets, might as well just, let the center forward hang until we figured out who the next guy is going to be, which I can appreciate. And they sort of like let that go. But yeah, any of the big signings that we made in this window, absolutely horrible. Like Joao Felix, I mean, fool me once, and then you end up paying the amount of money that you did. And Milan fans are saying the exact same things that our tactical geniuses said about who he's going to be. And I'll sort of like hold my hand up and say I rated this Joao Felix signing 0 point something when it happened. And for all the credit in the world, he tried more than Nkunku. Like whenever he did get the chance, he was trying to do the defensive work. He tried to sort of put the tackles in, showed some good spirit. And if there was somebody who needed to be moved out in the winter window, it had to be Nkunku and not Felix. Like that would have been my verdict. But I think when you've got your hands dirty with Mendes as an agent, then he pulls the strings and you dance the way that he wants you to dance. So unfortunately there, but as a whole for the incomings, I'd probably like stick to 1.5 max, and that's being generous.
Wow. Well, if you want to feel even better about business, let's talk about winter 2025, which I did not include in the poll, which maybe kind of is just reflective of how I felt about things that did or did not happen. I mean, we had Amogu come in from Saint Etienne, 50 million euros, the only incoming signing, and then you had the outgoings. Took an entire month, but we finally were able to find the right club for Cassidy heading to Reno, 13 million euros. You had Disasi go out on a loan, 6 million euros to Aston Villa. You had Felix go to AC Milan, scored in his debut there, 5.5 million euro fee on the loan. Vega goes to Juventus, 4 million euro loan fee. Chukwuemeka goes to Borussia Dortmund, 4 million euro fee. Chilwell goes to Crystal Palace on loan, which was only possible because we canceled the Trev Chalobah loan. So he comes back. So I guess you kind of count that as a signing. And then Caleb Wiley goes out to Watford on loan. Number, Nick, off the top of your head for this one?
0. I mean, it's a nonsense one. How much did we sign Cassidy for? It was
Close
Now
to 20, I
we
think.
do get we do get a large percentage of the sell on fee. So
sure.
if he performs well and gets sold in the future, there would be some future revenue that you would generate. But it was a 14.86 million fee. There were potentially loan fees that we acquired during the time period, so maybe you could argue that it has been positive on the net, but not necessarily the most ambitious type of purchase and sale.
No, I mean it's certainly, yeah. This whole summer and winter window, just I think from an ambition standpoint, shows that the club needs to try and make money, and they're failing at it. And that's the kind of the place that we are. I mean, there's no one in here that's a difference maker, and like Trev coming back is a huge, huge, huge failure because you did the club did everything just like they did for Connor to ship him out, and they couldn't really even do that well. And then they had to bring him back because we have an injury crisis with the signings that were made by the club. It is a complete full circle failure, and it's hard to even give it a rating, to be honest. It's a nothing window where nothing really happened. But unlike the nothing window last winter where we didn't hurt ourselves, I think you could argue that this was a nothing window where we didn't really help ourselves in a quest to reach our goals. And that to me, I think is the most frustrating part, is like, if you truly believe that top 4 is within your, or top 5, whatever the coefficient gives us as an outlay there, if that's really within your grasp, if winning something this year is really within your grasp, then you go do something to ensure that you give yourself the best chance to win. And that's just clearly didn't happen.
And yeah, just to pick up from Nick's point, Dan, you and I talked about this on a preview board, saying that maybe, if there was an opportunity, like if there were no opportunity to make any reinforcements, then you would have sort of sat in your hands and said, okay, let's go and figure this out in summer. We talked about Randall Kolomuani, who was available on a dry loan for 6 months on decent wages. He's gone to Juventus in 3 games, he scored 5. He's probably stylistically the closest thing that you can get to an Alexander Isak, somebody who's, a very good wide runner, very good in terms of like carrying the ball. He's not that great back to goal, but in terms of just being a mobile presence, somebody who helps you back to front, could have been that guy. There's absolutely no, especially for an hierarchy who's done this to Joao Felix twice. I would say it would have made every bit of sense to reinforce yourself at centre forward. Do not have the situation where your manager goes to play a cup tie with no centre forwards in his side. So it could have genuinely been like a game changer for me in terms of just trying and testing out. But yeah, maybe they looked back and said, okay, we've got Saul on loan, we've got Zakaria on loan. What good has that done us? So maybe just got a little spooked by it and said, no more dry loans, and we'll probably figure that out in the summer. So it's just like Nick said, it's a nothing window. But in this case, there were certain gaping requirements that you absolutely had to get done. Like you needed centre forward depth. You needed to figure out, with Vega gone, you probably
Yeah.
needed somebody to come in at left back. Like Chile's gone as well. He wasn't even playing, but like you have generally only Malo Gusto, and we saw how he played last game. Like he's shot in terms of his confidence, in terms of every single metric that you see. So your second choice right back is also your second choice left back, and he's failing at both. So I don't know what the plan is there. We're just one Kukureya injury, one Caicedo injury, one Nico Jackson injury away from absolutely ruining our chances for the season. So that's where I would say my rating takes a huge, huge nosedive towards like a 2 or even a 1.7.
Well, look, that is all of the windows examined kind of individually to break down kind of where we feel that there were hits and misses. Specific though to individual players, I think there's we did best signing, worst signing, and then we also asked about the biggest miss, a player that we could have potentially got that maybe Chelsea were rumored to be in the market for, but didn't end up getting him into the side. Best signing, no surprise. Very unanimous opinion of Cole Palmer. There were a couple of people who threw in Caicedo there, but I don't think this group is going to argue with that one. Where there will be more debate, I think potentially, and unfortunately, is around the worst signing. Though the vast majority, I think, went with Mudryk, maybe influenced by partially by the fee, Nick, but then also the recent, doping allegations, and if he will be suspended potentially for a significant period of time. Sanchez was the other big name. Yeah, I think those were the two biggest ones. Joao Felix popped up a couple times. Sterling popped up from a wage perspective, but it did feel as if Mudryk and Sanchez were the two most regretted of the
Really?
group based upon supporters. Do you have a different view?
Fascinating. Yeah, I do. I think Mudryk is going to end up in the pantheon of terrible Chelsea signings, but Lukaku is a clear number one for me there. Like it's going to be hard to unseat the £100 million striker who then dive bombs his own career through media. Like that's a that's a really tough hill to climb for anybody. Mudryk will be on the list, but nowhere near the top for me. I think Sanchez is an interesting one, but is more of like the club committing to like the style of goalkeeper who can try and play out of the back, and it's more of like a style choice. Like him as a signing for the fee wasn't that crazy, and I think would be pretty easily moved on at this point. Like he's just not a top club goalkeeper. That's more on the the sporting directors than it is on like him and his personal performance. I think it's Felix twice.
The loan and the purchase?
The loan and like I can forgive the loan. The purchase, I think, is just fucking insane. And I would throw. There's a lot of good choices here. There's a lot of really Sterling is up there.
Sad. There's a lot of good choices.
There are tons of good choices up there. Sterling's up there for me in terms of worst signing. Who else would be up there? I don't want to go like super, super obvious.
Well, give Sam here a chance then to offer if he has a. Do you agree with some of the consensus options, Sam, or do you have a different perspective?
Oh, Dewsbury Hall also would be on my list as worst signing. Yes. Sorry.
No worries. I think, Lukaku standout number one for me. Like, somebody who I have no empathy for from a player's perspective, just none whatsoever. Like,
No.
every time he opened the mouth, an angel died. Like, I'm absolutely certain this. So, good luck to him in terms of whatever his career brings in. But yeah, just a waste of money, waste of time. And to sort out like how many 4 loans for him every single window, just an incredible waste of resources. So yeah, probably
No,
bad.
this is
Uh,
obviously a signing done before the current sporting truck structure. This is a previous problem.
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah.
just giving the
This is like
scale.
who of the post June 2022, what would
Yeah.
be the worst signing that has been made since then?
yeah, so yeah, I'd probably say like it's a tie between Mudryk and Felix, like for me. So one of the two. The obvious ones, obviously. The not so obvious one for me is Romeo Lavia. I
Mm.
think it was a very, very bad choice of like profile and money spent. I think you could have invested that money wiser. I think obviously you've got Joe Shields in there who knows the player well, but from an athletic standpoint, especially for Pochettino, just the wrong kind of player. And I think it'll be the same for Mileska as well, with the amount of ground that he's been asked to cover. Um, Not really a great fit. He could still be a very good player, but for 60 million, probably with his availability issues, not really a good look for me. And I called this out very early saying I think Andre Santos is going to be better than him. So I genuinely like said that, and I have receipts from 2023, early 2023 saying he's going to be better, and I have like 15 comments calling me an idiot. But genuinely, just a more athletic player, more well-rounded player. So I think it was an unnecessary signing, especially for that amount of money. But yeah, that those are my three.
Yeah, I'm aligned with the Mudryk Sanchez ballot there. I think that would not win many elections. That's for sure. Biggest miss was one though that had, I think, a spread. I think there were people who said that Osimhen was someone that they thought was a big miss for the club here. There were people who talked about John Duran. There were individuals who mentioned Isak. Samu popped up very frequently, considering that he would have been available at what seemingly would have been a very reasonable fee for what he ended up outputting out there. Sam, do you have a perspective on the one biggest miss from June 2022 until now?
Oh, I think two guys take the cake. It's either going to be Michael Olise or Bradley Barcola, one of the two. I think
Hmm.
Mm.
Barcola is in
Hmm.
line to be like one of the best left wingers in the world. The same with Michael Olise, somebody who is just outstanding. Again, a Cobham kid. You don't get those two combinations very often. So it would have been great to have either of those two players here, but giant misses. More than John Duran, more than Samu, more than more than Osimhen. I think these two guys would have been quite transformative because those are the two exact places that we're lacking a lot, and they would have been tremendous, tremendous level raisers for us.
And as we kind of shift into this like view of looking ahead, right? So we've had a chance now to profile the windows. We talked about the hits or misses. We've had a look at where we could have potentially strengthened and didn't. We asked
By
some
the way, my
questions.
my window average is 2.1 across the 6 windows. That's my average score is 2.1.
Oh, it's a bad beat. It's a bad beat.
It's not where you want
Look,
to be.
Looking ahead though, summer 2025, there's a window coming up here. We asked people what they thought the one position was that Chelsea should be prioritizing. Very unsurprising fact that 46% said that it should be a striker. 42% then said goalkeeper was the next highest position. So 88% of people on those two, with then some splits around the center back, midfielder, and then winger kind of combination there. I think though, Nick, as we kind of think into this, though, there was a larger question we asked right after that one, which now knowing everything, we've talked about how the sporting directors and how the infrastructure was set up. We've talked about their performance over the windows. We've looked at who's been a valuable contributor and maybe who we've had to move on quickly because it was not the right purchase. We asked the question, how much faith do you have in the existing sporting structure? So our directors and our group that we have to successfully navigate that upcoming summer 2025 transfer window. We asked if they had a high level of faith. Did they have some faith? Were they neutral, little faith, or no faith? The highest one was little faith, 41%. You had 40% of the people who said no faith. You had 10% of people who had some faith. You had the next smallest sliver was some faith. And then you had one person out of the respondents who had a high level of faith, which I do not know if Paul or Lawrence voted in the poll, but you have to have that level of self-confidence. So I'm really appreciative that that's how you feel.
Yeah, I think you're this is a question I think, again, is based on results and where you are. Like, if you take this poll in October, it might be different than it is in February.
Sure.
But if we're being honest, like from really January of 23 to January of 2025, I have rated the job that these guys have done at a fail overall. And I would put myself firmly in the little faith. And it could, again, the sporting structure does not just include Lawrence and Paul and Joe. It includes the ownership. It includes everyone
Sure.
who's making decisions at a high level. This is not a hit piece on these guys in particular, but you have to question the strategy and you have to question the execution of the strategy. You can have, as much as Sam wants to call out goodwill and good intentions and all this sort of stuff, goodwill doesn't win you trophies. Good intentions don't win you stuff. And we are no closer to winning anything today than we were, when Roman left the club or sold it. So, if you're just gonna be as like straight up and down as you can based on the results that we've had, it's been a fail. We have not achieved our objectives at all. And that has to be factored into where your faith lies. I don't know, Sam, if you're going to take the polypositive view of what I just said, but that's where my head is at, is little faith. It's not no faith. It's just, I'm not super confident.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on this at least, like where it's in terms of what the intent was versus what the execution was. Yes, I can definitely give them a little bit of leeway, but there's also this odd PSR evading obsession with, give away this player and sign this player for whatever amount of money, which has really not gone down well with me because we've stocked up on players that make absolutely no sense. And it's just, again, repeating mistakes that we've done in the past. And I absolutely have no time for that kind of nonsense. So I do believe that there are some very good talent spotters in a hierarchy, especially Joe Shields when he sort of like looks at certain players and watches Instagram a lot and the kind of players that he picks out. Genuinely very, very good guys. And he notices them or follows them. Inevitably, when a player sort of shines in the tournament, you go on his Instagram and Joe Shields is already following him. And like, how did this come to pass? But this tells you that you've got good people in there. But yeah, the strategy in terms of using our resources well to take our level from sixth place to the dream was to be a top three team. Like that would have been a jump for us, but has it happened? In my opinion, no. And I don't think we'll come to know what this team is capable of at least for 2 years. And that's again me being a little optimistic because you've got a team with a median age of 23. None of these guys know what it is like to play in high level games. You will have to lose finals. You'll have to go through a lot of pain, Nick, before you realize what this team can do. And which is a fact. And I'm sorry to be like, don't shoot the messenger, but genuinely we're not the team anymore where, we had Drogba, Lampard, all those guys. And those guys lost Moscow as well before they turned it around, in Munich. These guys haven't lost. They haven't got to a final to lose it. So genuinely have to do that
Well,
first a couple of times. Yeah.
we lost a Liverpool C team in a final. That was pretty embarrassing.
That's
But yeah, I
terrible.
mean, I think to your broader point is like, you're asking a fan base that has been jolted and jerked around over the last
Conditioned to
4
winning.
years, who is
Mhm.
conditioned to winning and who has standards, to go, hey, we need to burn this thing down and rebuild it in our image for it to be successful. And you're asking a fan base to put a lot of faith and trust in the people who are making the decisions, who have not proven themselves to be worthy of that faith or trust yet. I mean, just flat up, just being honest, like that's how I feel. And I think if your point of view there, Sam, is that it's going to be 2 or 3 more years, that's an old adage for the Chicago Cubs, when they were historically bad losers, which is next year's our year, when there was no evidence of there being a build to any sort of realistic title in sight. And so, you pray to God that this team can get over the line in the UECL. It will be supremely embarrassing if we lose in the UEFA Europa Conference League. But if they are, that's potentially a moment and a marker to go, at least we fucking won something. Now, what can we go do? I just don't know if we're going to do it with these guys.
I think that puts us in the situation of, I think little to no faith is where I kind of trend within this perspective, because, you could have Kendry come in, you could have Estevo come in, and they are absolute game changers for this team and take us to an absolute new level. Santos coming back in, if we don't sell him during the summer, which would kind of be the thing that could happen. Like, it does feel as if there could be, or with the performance, if it gets evaluated the right way, I'm kind of shocked that like they're not under as much pressure as Enzo Maresca is, because I think obviously he is the manager and he's the coach, and he kind of gets responsibility for what happens on the pitch, and he's had some hits and misses this season too, but he also can only field the squad that's been put together for him. And as we've illuminated here, based upon the performance of the manager, or of the sporting directors, and based upon the ownership group, like we have not put together a squad, as we'll talk about here, just to kind of in our final piece of where that squad is at a whole level. When you look at where this squad is, and who put this together for us, Nick?
Our friend Kyle Scott put this together. He has a tracker that he keeps all the signings, the outgoings, and then the current look at the squad at the end. So appreciate Kyle jumping in and trying to make some sense of this.
So if you look at it, striker has Jackson Guiu, left winger Sancho. Neto shows up in both because he can play both sides, and Mudryk. Right wing, Madueke, Neto, Estevo, but we'll count that for next season. You have in the 10 spot, Palmer and Kunku. Kendry, Kellerman gets a nod here.
There you
Kyle
go.
remembered
There's
him. Transfer market didn't. In CDM, you have Caicedo, Lavia, and Ogochukwu, who's currently on a loan. In kind of more the advanced midfielder, Fernandez, Santos on loan, Dewsbury Hall. Left back, Cucurella, Vega on loan, Wiley on loan. Left center back, Cucurella, Badiashile, and Somino. Right center back, Trev Chalobah, Tosin, Fofana.
Sorry, you meant Colwell, not Cucurella.
Colwell, yes, I did. Yes. Sar, and then you have on right back, James, Gusto, Joshua Chempong, and then goalkeeper, the longest list of the bunch of Sanchez, Jorgensen, Petrovic, Penders, and Slonina. The questions you had here, Nick, were...
That section has a basement as well. Like there are 5 more names under it. It sort of like drops down.
So I guess the question was like, how do you rate the squad over 10, and how many positions need a signing to make it a true contender? So snap number, Nick. Just what's it out of 10?
It's probably a 6.5 or a 7.
Okay.
Like it could go all the way up to an 8 if everyone maxed their potential. For me, like that's kind of where I land. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, good numbers for me. I would probably say right now it's somewhere around like maybe 5.5 for me. I think there are some key positions where I'm looking at, but there's not enough depth or quality. But that's just for the now. And I think that if you gave it some time in terms of giving them the ideal environment to thrive, then yes, it could go up to 7.5. If, like you said, with the guys on loan coming back and all of them max out the potential that we see in them, then we probably could go to 8, 8.5 for me max. But we still are, probably an Allison Van Dyke kind of signing away from truly competing against the greats. But the problem is those signings are blocked out to us. We cannot go into that wage bracket because we are so deeply embedded into the Q22 has to be under 150K to sign them. And that's what, that's why Oli said income. That's why the top guys will say no. And that's what worries me a little bit because you've closed that talent pool out for good.
I think where I'm at is you see a lot of names on here and they're sexy names. Like they're guys that people have played with on FIFA or have in their fantasy Premier League teams or whatever. And there is I think outside of Palmer and Caicedo, maybe Cucurella I'd throw in here. There aren't many guys who have hit their ceiling as consistent, excellent contributors. I think there's a ton of potential here, whatever potential is, but you have to coach and develop potential into talent. and into results. And that is a place where I'm just not 100% sure when I look at this, Dan, like without signings, we're going to be 6th, 7th, 5th for a long time.
You're on the cusp of, could you be a title contender, or are you a mid-table side in the Premier League? Like, you're flirting in the 4 to 8 range, as kind of where you are currently. And so that to me is like I think a 6 on reality. I do think, like, on potential you could grade higher, and that like transitions into like just a thought-provoking question to kind of end the episode. We were joking before we started recording. Do Chelsea win we said Champions League, but you've added in here Premier League title within the next 15 years?
I need to answer your other question first. How many key pieces are needed to be a real title contender before we answer that question?
Yeah.
You definitely need a goalkeeper.
Yep.
For sure. I think you need a real CDM type, whether that is Andre Santos coming back from loan or you go sign someone else. Like, you need someone to complement Caicedo, who cannot continue to grow if he's consistently being asked to do every job in midfield. You definitely need competition for Nico Jackson, and you need a winger who's going to outperform everybody else. Right now, we have a lot of wingers who are performing at a level that is simply just not going to help Chelsea win. I think those are your key positions. And if Chelsea make critical signings there, it could take it up to a 9. But right now, I just don't. We're nowhere near a title contender.
Oh, yeah. Sobering thoughts before ending this.
Yeah.
So the snap answer: will Chelsea win a Premier League title or Champions League in the next 15 years?
15. Oh my God. Yeah, just went fast forward into my 40s, but I'm hoping so. I think it will. I think that there will be a big title for us. It's just, I truly believe some teams have it in them, genetics wise, history wise. That's why Tottenham always bottle. I genuinely believe that, when you get into those big occasions, something about the club, something about the history just propels you further. But I do think there are some really, really good talents on the horizon. And hopefully we'll be able to make the right kind of signings. Maybe just like 1 or 2 signings away from really mounting and getting that balance right. Maybe that's just the optimism throughout the pod that I've tried to sprinkle over like what the perspective is sort of coming out. But generally feel like if all of it clicks, then we can definitely go top 3 consistently. But hopefully that comes to pass.
A lot of things can happen in 15 years. Football transitions at light speed.
New ownership, because they're only locked in for 10 years.
Yeah, like it could be there could be a huge shift that happens in football. You don't know what's going to happen in the broader economies over this period of time. Like, it's a tremendous variance. I would edge with Sam. Like, I would hope so. I would love to go to another Champions League final and be there to support the team and see them lift another Champions League. I think based on what I'm seeing right now, like, there would have to be to do what they want to do, which is basically limit outlay, scout ahead, build these guys up. There's going to have to be a rub where they stop selling the talent to make the money to win the trophies. Is a reason why Dortmund don't win that much stuff, because they consistently sell their best talent, try and replenish that talent, and go on a cool run like they did last year all the way to Champions League final, and then they're kind of back where they were. If that's the model, then the answer is no. If the model shifts, potentially.
I always think that the Champions League ends up being a harder thing to win than the Premier League, particularly with some of the new format changes too. So I would say yes, but barely within that 15-year window for Chelsea to win the league again, and then no for a Champions League victory over that time frame. But we want to know what you think, listeners, because you've had a chance to listen to now 2 hours of conversation on this topic. So let us know in the comments on YouTube. Hit us up on social if you have an opinion. But hopefully we've tried to demystify where and how we have gotten here as Chelsea Football Club from June 2022 until now. It took us a little bit of time over a couple episodes. We appreciate you sticking with us on this one. Thanks to Nick and Sam for hanging out with me on a Sunday afternoon here, trending towards evening, morning for Sam. That's going to do it for this episode. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.